All right, Tom, so you wrote earlier this week that Cam Newton needed to hit the ground running in order to ensure that he would win this quarterback battle with Mac Jones that we were all anticipating. Did he hit the ground running today?
He did not. I'm not saying that he showed up at a standstill, but he was not speeding along. Meanwhile, the steady arc of improvement that we saw during minicamp from Mac Jones continued. But Cam is really the focus here, Phil, because he is the anointed starter. So what we saw from him today was not him building on the last day of minicamp, that Wednesday when he was outstanding, but a guy who at times was indecisive, at times was inaccurate, and had the only 2 picks of the day. Phil, to me, Cam Newton was not the better quarterback, and it wasn't really close.
It wasn't. He was the first quarterback, though, right? So we'll mention that right off the top. The first guy in every team period. He was working with players that you all out there would consider starters. First offensive line group, the Nelson Aguilars, the Jonnu Smiths, the Hunter Henrys of the world. Mac Jones worked with more of a smattering of offensive linemen and weapons, a little bit of mix of reserves and names that you would know. But when it comes to Cam Newton, what stood out to me today, Tom, and he had his moments, completed the first 4 of 5 attempts that he threw out there today, was just some indecisiveness. And I felt like the kind of practice that today's practice was really highlighted some of the deficiencies in his game. They were in that low red zone area. There's a lot of traffic.
Yep.
Things speed up down there. And that's just not where he excels at this point in his career.
No, and the Patriots were out there, started at 10 a.m., and they're out there in shorts, jerseys, helmets. So there's not a lot of contact. Phil's point about the fact that this was going to be a passing type of camp early on, exactly right. He said that earlier this week. So what we saw was a lot of that compressed offense, which demands quick decision-making, which demands accuracy and demands certain kinds of throws. And those 2 picks that Cam Newton had today, Phil, were exactly the kind of throws you can't make down low. The first one really got your goat because it was a pick by, of course, Raekwon McMillan.
Of course.
Intended for James White.
Yeah, everybody was expecting a Raekwon McMillan reference today, but it did sort of, in a way, paint how the entire day went for Cam Newton by and large. The ball was late coming out. When it did come out, it was a little hot. It bounced off James White's, forearm, shoulder. It was thrown a little high on the goal line. Tom, it's a practice where when you're in that low red zone area, Josh McDaniels loves to work with these quarterbacks on throwing low to the goal line, high to the back end line. That way, if it does get deflected, it's probably incomplete at worst. Here the ball was thrown a little bit high, a little bit hard, bounced off James White, and ends up getting picked. And it wasn't even the accuracy of it, Tom. And I didn't think that was his biggest issue today. It's just the timing. The timing and the rhythm, especially down low where things are really sped up and they need to be on time, it wasn't there consistently for him.
And that's what's amazing to me. We're talking here about Mac Jones having a better practice than a guy who's been in the league for more than 10 seasons, who's a former MVP, who was the first overall pick, who was a Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, a lot of his skill set, Cam Newton I'm talking about, is not geared to quick decision-making and getting the ball out. It's geared towards a completely different brand of football, which has been extremely successful for him. But here in New England, at this stage of his career, he has to be a thrower. And for him to be a thrower, he has to be accurate and he has to be quick and decisive. And it does not play to his strengths, as Phil pointed out. It's not exactly what you want to see, is Cam Newton trying to thread the needle and be a supercomputer back there. He wants to bully and plow people over, and we didn't see it. And his second pick was actually uglier than his first. And that came on, again, a doorstep of the goal line throw. Hunter Henry with a quick outbreaking route off the right-hand side should have been thrown right to the pylon. Instead, it was behind him, and it went directly to Adrian Phillips.
Right. If you miss there, you want to miss out of bounds, essentially, right? You want to err on that side of the field. It looked like Cam Newton was throwing, I'm sure this wasn't his intention, but it was almost a back shoulder throw, but back shoulder towards the middle of the field. So you're inviting the defense to become a part of that play. And what ended up happening was it looked like the pass was intended more for Adrian Phillips, who ended up coming up with the interception, than Hunter Henry. I don't even know if Hunter Henry was able to get a hand on it. He might have deflected it ever so slightly.
He almost slipped a disc trying to get back to the thing.
But that's the kind of thing, that's the combination of the James White pass wasn't, the accuracy wasn't so far off the mark. It was the timing and maybe the velocity there. On that play, it was the timing and the accuracy. And you get what, in a game, listen, it's the first practice of training camp. We understand that. But in a game, down in that area of the field, everything is heightened, and that's the kind of not penalty, but turnover that could be a back-breaking play.
For those of you who are following on NBC Sports Boston.com, and I'm sure you all are, you're seeing the statistics. Phil did a great job on Quarterback Watch today, putting the numbers out there. And when you look at the numbers completion-wise, we don't do all the yards because we're not doing that, folks. But when you look at the completions, they match up. But the devil is in the details between the completion percentage of Mac Jones and Cam Newton. While similar, there is a difference there to be found.
Yeah, I would just say that it's the timing of it. It's playing within the structure of the plays, which you hear sometimes coaches describe this kind of aspect of quarterback play. If you're in rhythm and you're getting to the throw when the throw is scheduled to be made, that's what you're looking for. With Cam Newton, a lot of those completions that you see when you look at these numbers, some of them come after hold, option A, option B, maybe back to option A, and then throw. And while that could happen in a game, it's not exactly how the play was drawn up, and it's not maximizing your potential for each and every play, maybe for yards after the catch, things of that nature.
I wonder sometimes whether Cam Newton understands the urgency necessary to stave off the challenge that Mac Jones is going to bring. I'm not saying that he doesn't care, but there's a weird tendency of him to have a spate of bad throws at the end of sessions. And when he showed up on field, the first guy out there was Mac Jones. Cam Newton came out, and he really didn't take a whole lot of throwing reps prior to the practice beginning. Mac Jones is coming for his job. Cam has paid a lot of lip service to the notion that this is going to be different, but this wasn't any different. But Phil, if this was a boxing match and this was a first round, how would you have scored it? 10-8 usually is a knockdown. Was this a 10-8 round?
I think it's close. I wouldn't call it 10-8, though. I'd call it 10-9.
Okay.
And I think you're on the same page as me. Very quickly, what do you think Cam Newton's teammates are thinking about Cam Newton right now? Because we just recorded our Patriots Talk podcast, our Next Pats podcast, and you relayed an interesting anecdote to me that you noticed in the middle of practice.
It was after the pick to Hunter Henry, and I was focused through my binoculars on that situation. And then I glanced back and I saw 3 linemen who were not on the field at that time in that rep standing together. And one of the linemen made this face.
It plays better on TV than it does on the audio version, I think. That
So
face, yeah.
as a result, either somebody had a little bit of gas or they did see that pick and didn't love it. Phil Perry, of course, this week has written extensively about Mac Jones, and through his Next Pats podcast has done a great job in forecasting what Mac Jones might be capable of. What did you see from him today that impressed? And let's be fair and balanced. What things did you see from him today that made you say, need some work?
Yeah, let's start out with the things that need some work, because we did see some things early that said, okay, maybe he's going to need a little time before he gets his feet under him here, because on one of his first snaps in his first training camp practice as a professional athlete, he botched the snap. He botched a handoff on a jet motion play, almost fumbled it, didn't fumble it, but still was sent for a lap. He gets the nice standing ovation from the crowd in attendance on those. Yeah, very supportive crowd on hand today. But, he's penalized for making a mistake there. He missed, I would say, on all 3 of his incompletions in the 7-on-7 period, which happened early in the practice. He's only 1 for 4 in 7-on-7s. But outside of those moments, Tom, it felt like he really had command of the offense. And it's just unusual to see a young quarterback. We've seen young quarterbacks before. Not first-round pick quarterbacks, granted. But Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, you want to throw Ryan Mallett in there, Kevin O'Connell, whoever.
Stiddy.
Throw Stiddy in there. The ability to get rid of the football on time and in rhythm is something that we saw from him in the spring, and it continued over to today. And I thought that, combined with some really eye-openingly accurate throws, made it an impressive practice for him.
And it's funny you use that word, eye-opening. I called it eyebrow-raising because he's not a jaw-dropping thrower. Jaw-dropping to me, it's Justin Herbert, it's Trevor Lawrence, it's off-platform Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Those guys make you go, oh. But what you see with Mac Jones are those throws into tight windows that aren't probably lasered in, but you just didn't think it was going to get there, and you go, wow. Next thing you know, you got a guy like Kendrick Bourne hauling his posterior across the back line of the end zone. All he has to do is put his hands up and close his fingers. He's got a touchdown. He did that. We saw that then. We saw that on a 3rd read to Nelson Agholor, which caught your eye as well.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how many reads he had to go through to get to Nelson Agholor, but that play stood out to me. It was early in the practice. It was a short route to Jonnu Smith that he was looking for. Jonnu Smith, very well covered. He almost fell down getting out of his route. And he quickly moved on from that number 1 read all the way back across the field to Nelson Agholor, who was running along the back end line in the opposite corner of the end zone, and lofted a pass. Again, the velocity wouldn't make you stand up and get out of your chair, but it's perfectly accurate, and it's laid out in front of him with plenty of room to spare for a touchdown. His ability to do that within the structure of the play. That play was still in rhythm. It wasn't a scramble drill play. It wasn't a hold, and get rid of it kind of play. For him to be able to do that at this early stage of his career, Tom, really stands out.
And that was something that did not stand out to the positive with Jimmy Garoppolo in particular. He actually was horrendous down low early in his career, and he was in his second season as well, coming back early in training camp. There will be bad days ahead for Mac Jones.
No doubt.
But what he will have affixed to him at all times is offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, Phil.
Yeah, I thought, that is worth noting as well. We saw that all throughout the spring. When Mac Jones is there and he's throwing with Cam Newton and he's working with Brian Hoyer, if they ever had to split up, which they did early in practice, Mac Jones goes down the opposite end of the field to throw to the receivers. Will the two veterans stay and throw to the tight ends and the backs? Who goes with Mac Jones? Josh McDaniels. And after every period where Mac Jones got his maybe 3-4 reps under center, behind center, as soon as he was done with those, he'd hightail it back to the back of the pack, find Josh McDaniels, and chat him up as Brian Hoyer was making throws, as Cam Newton was making throws, as if they were going over those plays, and this is how this should be done, and this is what you should be thinking on this rep. We don't know exactly what they're saying, but the amount of information he's trying to download right now is really extensive. Dante Hightower, fellow Alabama guy, after practice, I asked him about Mac Jones. He said, he's a sponge, and it looked that way during practice today.
Jonnu Smith talked about swagger. And to be an NFL quarterback, you have to come in right away and assert that you understand what you're supposed to be doing. Did you see that from Mac Jones on any occasions today where he kind of gave that swagger or assertiveness in not an abrasive way, but a way that caught anyone's attention?
Yeah, he got hot at one point, and it was J.J. Taylor. So it's not like this was a 10-year vet that he was going after, but there was an incompletion late in practice. And as soon as the ball hit the turf, little swing route to J.J. Taylor in the flat. As soon as the ball hit the ground, the palms go in the air for Mac Jones. He's staring at J.J. Taylor, and he beelines it over to the second-year running back. And he looked a little heated, Tom. He very quickly, I think, shifted gears into sort of supportive coach mode, and the arm goes around the shoulder, and he gives him a pat on the back and says, let's get after it. But for him to, in that way, not go after a player, but really be willing to make an immediate correction. He's not waiting to go into the building and let Josh tell J.J. Taylor what happened and what he did wrong. He told him right away. That's something that I can't remember seeing a young quarterback do that here in Foxborough before.
I think what's really impressive about it, too, isn't the assertiveness. It's the surety that I'm right. I just got here, and I know I'm right, so I'm going to show you up.